Hello, everyone, and welcome to You Matter Talks. And today I am so thrilled to have Jaitara with us. Hello.
Hello, my love. It's wonderful to be here.
It is fabulous to have you.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about our talk today. When I asked you what you really felt was sort of calling to you, you wanted to have a really nice conversation about deepening our connection with ourself and source. Two things that I'm a huge fan of. And then also as we were getting on, we were having a little chat about how we're noticing in our own lives and in other people's lives, we're hearing from them that some people are kind of filling the void with some coping mechanisms.
Yes, yes. Myself included.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, with the as it started, I know for me personally, it started as self-pleasure. One of my things is, I love food. And when all this started, I have way more food in my house than I normally would.
So
And
true.
so I thought, oh, I'm gonna treat myself. So I get a organic brisket, like the French sticks of bread, the big
Oh,
the baguettes,
yeah.
and then this organic soft goat cheese, and I just be sitting with the crunchy, crispy crust and the soft inside, and that would be my meal for the day. Like I go through the whole thing, and then I was fine that I wouldn't, have any bread for a few days, but recently my carb addictions have kicked in. So my self-pleasure treat that I was giving myself has now got turned into an overindulgence. So now I'm in a place now where
Yeah.
I was a little shocked when I stepped on the scale. So
Yeah.
I've gone up about 15 pounds and I'm only 5'2". I've got a belly that I didn't have when all this started.
You got your, that's what we call that, the Buddha belly.
Yeah, and I'm really good at not going into guilt because that serves nothing. But yeah, I've got a Buddha belly, but it's a matter of health and just the way I feel. I'm
Totally.
feeling the way.
Totally.
So, and yesterday I caught myself eating snacks like I wasn't even taking the time to savor it. So I crossed that threshold,
Yes.
allowing myself to indulge in the pleasure. Because usually when I eat a pleasure food, I'm really good at just savoring it, being in the pleasure, guilt-free, and then you fill that void. And yesterday
Totally.
I caught myself not savoring, and I thought, okay, I've crossed the threshold into the sugar addiction to the point where it's not healthy anymore. So I'm having to address that myself. And I know a lot of people, I've seen so many posts on Facebook about people talking about how much weight they've gained during this time.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it all. I mean, I've had people telling me that they're gaining weight because they're eating more carbs, more fat, more all of that, right? Total coping mechanism, it can be. And just having tons of food around the house, or there's some people that really don't have a lot of food around the house too, so they're kind of having the opposite. But then some of them I've been hearing like a lot more cannabis. Some people are drinking a lot more alcohol. Some people are like, oh my gosh, I'm like binging on Netflix, tons now. And I think it's, what you're bringing up is such a great point, because there is a line between having pleasure in life and being able to really enjoy things.
Yeah.
And then when it goes into the kind of coping, addiction, whatever those are, right? And
when it shifts from savoring the pleasure and crosses that threshold into addiction, then it's just a matter of self-care. Okay, I need to acknowledge this, and
totally.
And again, we don't want to go into guilt because guilt serves nothing. It's just being aware, observing yourself, just stepping back as the observer and observing and saying, okay, self, this is this is you've crossed that threshold now that you need to pay attention to this, and now start applying self-love in the form of self-care for health purposes.
Totally, right? And I mean, the nice thing is about all these things, if you just start becoming more aware and conscious of it again, and then sort of backing the truck up again, then you will end up back in a place that is more in balance, right? Like everything's a pendulum.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No self-judgment, no guilt. That serves nothing.
No, it tends to
At
reinforce.
all. Just again, the observer, and just, and if it is food, if it is something you're putting into your body, whether it's cannabis, alcohol, food, if you know you've crossed that threshold, it's about, just talking to your belly. Like I talk to my belly. I've got a very healthy relationship with my body. So I was apologizing to my belly last night. I'm so sorry. You're working so hard. Not, being kind to your body and just recognizing because our body is like the love of our life. It's so loyal. It works so hard to take care of us every moment of every day.
It does. And like I love that you've brought up the guilt piece because that is such a huge thing. And
Yeah.
it just tends to reinforce it all, whether you want to just, think about whether you're just, that's the vibration you're in, or you want to think of it more scientifically in terms of now you're hardwiring that thought process of being in guilt, of being hard on yourself. I call it when we take out the big baseball bat.
Mhm.
It really doesn't work. It actually ends up contributing to those patterns rather than releasing them. And so, yeah, it's just so important to be gentle with ourselves. Like,
Mhm.
that seems to be like the thing that I just hear again and again through this whole process when I'm talking to people is just being gentle on ourselves.
Yes.
Just really acknowledging our humanness, acknowledging all the feelings and emotions that we're all going through, all the ups and downs, coping mechanisms, and then being gentle because it's so easy to be hard on ourselves. Like, even last night, I was like literally working on my guilt. It was like having a talk with my body about my guilt, having a talk with God about my guilt, because I'm being mom like 24/7 full time.
Yeah.
And kiddo wanted to come sleep with me last night, and I knew that she was feeling lonely,
Mhm.
and I just really wanted sleep in my own space. you know and if I felt so guilty having those boundaries, is like, where can I have those boundaries? Like, right now she really needs me, so where can I give her that and then still sort of reclaim some sort of sense of having my own alone time, my own me time,
Yeah.
in a way that works for both of us. But you really can't get to that place when you're too engulfed in the guilt and the shame and the beating yourself up, right?
Yeah, I had a big aha moment many years ago. I work in the film business as well as the sacred sexuality work that I do. I'm about to merge those two professions soon. But this was when I was working completely full time in film, and I was working as a stand in. And as you know, in the film business, there's food everywhere. And I've never had addictive tendencies with any kind of drugs or alcohol, but food has been my vice, specifically sugar. I get into the sugar additions. And I caught myself one day on a film set. There was a bowl of Smarties on the craft service table, and I caught myself looking to make sure no one was looking, and I literally shoving handfuls in. And I caught myself. I'm like, what am I doing? This crazy. I think it was right around that time I had a reading with a clairvoyant, and she picked up on that. She said, you're putting food into your body and then you're feeling guilty, and it's confusing your body. So you're processing the food while feeling guilt, and it's impacting your health because it's causing a vibration, a frequency in your body that is not serving you. And she hit it dead on the nail. So it was around that time that I really figured out that it's okay for me to reach for stuff like that. But if you're going to eat a pleasure food, to really indulge in the pleasure.
Be in pleasure,
When
right?
the guilt was taking over, and I wasn't enjoying it. I was like getting the taste, but when you take it and you just
Yeah.
mm, savor it and eat it slowly and be fully into the pleasure. And then when I started eating pleasure food like that, now the void was filled and I didn't crave it again for a while. But because I do have that addiction tendency, recently, last night, I crossed that threshold and I caught myself
Right.
sitting down. It was like organic nuts and stuff, but it had a lot of chunks of dark chocolate in it too. And
Yeah.
I was eating it like this. I wasn't savoring, and I'm like, uh-oh, I've crossed that, I've crossed that threshold.
Yeah, either not actually enjoying it or not really being aware of the intake, which I find people
Yeah, I was
do.
disconnected from what I was putting in, and
Totally.
it was just like mindless. I was
Yeah.
sitting there watching TV and just shoving it in there.
Yeah. And when you start hiding things, that was the other one that you brought up that I thought was brilliant. And that's so true too. When you have to start hiding things, like when you're sneaking something, you're like, I hope someone doesn't see me doing this again. That's
Yeah.
usually a sign it may have turned into a vice as well.
Yeah.
This is such a fabulous conversation because I hear all the time with clients, they'll come in, they're like, I would really like to work on this. And it might be food, alcohol, cannabis,
Mhm.
TV, even like too much exercise. Like we all have our interesting vices.
Yeah.
And they're like, when do I know that it's become a problem? Right. And
Mhm.
so I think this is a great conversation, is to give anybody that's watching like a few
Yes.
clues as to how they might decide to interpret when it's time to turn the dial back on something and give it a
Mhm.
little bit more awareness. And I love that you're bringing up the pleasure and the food thing, because that was probably one of the biggest blessings that I actually learned when I went into sacred sexuality. I did not grow up learning to really savor and taste food. It was like you need to eat at the dinner table, like with everybody else, get it down, not even feeling when your body's full. You need to finish your plate. Like there was all this conditioning around eating. And I loved cooking, loved all that. And the funny thing is, when that shifted, it's like I actually don't cook as much. Like I find so much pleasure in less now, I guess. Like I don't need to make these big indulgent meals so often. I don't,
Yeah.
like I can really just indulge in like oh my gosh, like my cup of cacao in the morning.
Mm.
Oh, like I'll wake up before my kiddo, get that ready. And
Mine is a bulletproof coffee.
oh yeah, see, I can't do like the I have a thing with coffee like too much caffeine. It doesn't
Okay.
process in my body. I don't
Right.
my body doesn't detox things genetically well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so cacao has a little bit of caffeine, but not too much, so I can handle
Yes.
it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't have green tea or coffees, but I like my cacao. I don't think I'd actually be able to go to coffee now.
Well, I make sure I get organic, very low acidity. But I love putting in the ghee and then whipping it up with the hand blender. So I have this layer of froth, and that's my morning. It's just, and cinnamon and sprinkles on top. And
Yeah, see, I do the
it's a ritual for me. And, especially those first few moments when I get the froth on the top, it's just my morning ritual. I'll just, no distractions, nothing, just
right.
me and that cup and looking out the window at the trees.
And just making it a meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I do. It's funny, I do similar. It's the cacao, like the organic raw with water and
Mm.
then ghee, or I do an MCT oil.
Mm.
Usually an MCT oil now, more or less. But yeah, it's so good. Yeah. And it's funny because when I don't do that in the morning, like if I get up and I'm rushed or something, I actually notice that like my day is faster. Like my whole rhythm changes. Like just
Yeah.
opening my day with that sort of, self-care is such a wide term,
It
but
is.
really it is my self-care. It's like, where can I just have that morning time, same as you, like looking out into the sun
Mhm.
shine, seeing, the sort of the world wake up and just really being with it.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I like to do is actually to sit outside. I'm so blessed here because I'm in a townhouse, and right on the other side of the fence of the backyard, I'm looking at it right now, is a park with a duck pond. So my
Oh,
favorite thing, as soon as I wake up, sometimes before I even wash my face, I'll literally go out of bed, take my dog out, and while she's doing her thing, I sit there and take deep breaths, really connect to the breath and just tune into the birds. I just listen for, and right now it's amazing. There is a symphony out there because it's mating season.
I love it.
And tune into the birds and then just express gratitude for the sun and the trees and the birds and just that. And then after that, then the next stage is the coffee.
Right. What a beautiful way to connect. You're connecting to yourself,
That's my
through your
way.
breath, you're connecting to nature.
Mhm.
Yeah, I too do the breath, but I do it in bed. It's actually
Mm.
before, because I used to have, had the complex PTSD, which,
Mhm.
one of those parcels was like really, really, really bad anxiety attacks first thing in the morning. So
Oh, wow.
as I healed, I stopped having anxiety during the day, but I started actually waking up. It was the weirdest thing, literally waking up with anxiety.
Oh,
Um,
goodness.
and so the first thing my body would do when it woke up was to like go into this. So I actually just started a ritual of like actually just deep breathing
Mm.
as soon as I wake up. So it's just as soon as my alarm goes off, I'm taking deep breaths. I'm taking deep breaths. I'm taking deep breaths. And, for the longest time, I would probably do about a minimum of 30 minutes of that
Oh, wow.
until that anxiety was able to, right? Just to retraining my body. It's like, you're safe, you're safe, you're safe, you're safe, you're safe, you're safe.
The breath is so powerful.
It is hugely powerful. And I mean, it's amazing, I don't know what your experience is, but looking back, how disconnected I was from my body, how disconnected I was from my breath, and how much breath brought me back. I mean, I didn't start with breath work in my work. I started with meditation,
Mhm.
but the breath was became such an awareness for me in my meditation. And it was like, that was like my first, I think, call to coming home to my relationship with my body again, to actually realizing that it was here. Even, I know it sounds a little bit crazy, but I really got to a point where I realized that I had not been living in my body for years, like
Mm.
years. And when I came back into it and I felt all the pain in it and I mean, it was almost unbearable. It was like, oh, wow, that's obviously why I decided to stop living in my body at some point, because it was very painful. But it was through coming back in that I was able to have the awarenesses I needed to do the healing work and to start enjoying my body. And oh my gosh, I had no idea all the fantastic things it could do for me.
Our bodies are amazing. That's interesting. As you're talking, I'm trying to think back as when I really started falling in love with the breath. And for me, it was actually the holistic rebirthing that came for me before the meditation. It was years ago when I first discovered Mahara Brenna's work. We were both facilitators at this very large seminar event, and I was doing a breakthrough process 2 nights before hers. And it was my second year doing this. I started doing it in 2002. So I think it was 2004. I thought, oh, let me go back to the event and see what's happening on the Wednesday night. And I just walked into this room with 300 people going through this rebirthing. I'm like, whoa, this is, it's like, when you've got that many, it's a cross between an insane asylum and a nursery. It's like, it's just crazy. And I fell in love with it right away. So I fell in love with the rebirthing breath. And I discovered very quickly that I really needed it for myself, because
Oh,
when I was just still beginning my own emotional healing journey, and I had layers that needed to be brought to the surface, and that breath did it for me. So that's what got me to fall in love with the breath, and then started incorporating it more into meditation, and learning how to use the breath to move the sexual energy through the body. And I'm just loving this journey of falling in love with the breath and all the ways, all the things it does for us. It's the most powerful instrument we have, that we're born with, and so few of us are taught how to use it.
oh, and then like, I mean, now you're going into a whole nother layer of the conversation, which is, I mean, most people just to really learn about breath is really big. But then, yes, when you start incorporating it in your sexuality,
Mm.
and you can actually move your sexual energy through your whole body and use it to like
Yes.
infuse yourself. Oh
Yes.
my gosh. And then, I mean, you can go into energetic orgasms.
Yeah. Well, before I moved to Toronto, I moved to Vancouver in 2001. I was in Toronto for 18 years. I started out in Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
And a couple of years before I moved here, I got trained in Reiki. That's where I learned, became a Reiki master. And so I learned all about the chakras, moving the energy through the chakras, but it didn't involve breath as well. And I was just curious. I thought, oh, I wonder what'll happen. And I'd never heard of Tantra at that point. I thought, oh, I wonder what'll happen if I move my sexual energy up my chakra. So I was doing it visually, and it was like, whoa, okay, that works. And that was before I started incorporating the breath. I was just doing it through visualization of moving, self-pleasuring and moving the energy up. And I discovered very quickly it was very powerful. Then when I discovered the breath and added that layer in there, it just opens up a whole other realm.
Oh, it's so true.
The breath, the spinal column, and our sexual energy are designed to work together.
Yeah. And I mean, and how many people, people that are watching right now, I mean, there's going to be a large percentage of them where those are not working together, where in fact, they're almost completely disconnected.
Yeah.
Like so many of the people I see, and I'm sure it's the same for you, that come into my practice are just like, I mean, it's like they've been like cut in half here.
Yeah.
There's not a huge connection going on between their upper and lower body, the energy moving up and down their spine, and they're even bringing their breath, deeper into their bodies. And even then, it's such an interesting thing because I've explored breath work with different practitioners, like different kinds of breathing techniques. And I had learned very early on to, do this kind of full lower breath. But then it became very interesting when I actually got taught that I could bring breath way up into my lungs here and here and here and here and into my back. And it was this like, oh, and like what that does for freedom in your body, for your sexuality. I mean, when you can bring that breath into your sex too.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, and just for those listening, the breath, if you think of it as a vehicle, it's like an instrument. It's how you can consciously move the energy in your body. So when you tap into your breath, just start taking much deeper conscious breaths, and then you can literally move the energy through your body the way you desire. And when your sexual energy is activated, your breath is the way to raise it into your upper body, to move it through your body. Now, when you're playing with this, I just want to put this in there. When you start playing with this and you do start moving it up, it's really important also to make sure you keep it really well grounded.
yes.
Once you start playing with the sexual energy and it starts going this way, you want to make sure that your roots, that you're really anchored into the ground. Like in my self-pleasure practice, as I send it up, I'm making sure it's also going down. So it's like we're a conduit so that we can, the energy is going this way. We are that conduit between this realm and the earthly realm. So it's important because the energy is so powerful.
I totally,
so it's so important to anchor it and to ground it at the same time.
I hear you, because I mean, I had one time where I was really exploring, and I went like way into the ethers, like to the point where I actually got scared. Like all of a sudden I was like, oh, like I felt so ungrounded, and I immediately kind of stopped. And it was like, what was going on? And it wasn't until I had talked to a well-known tantra teacher after that, and they're like, oh, you weren't anchored. You just going whoosh.
Yeah.
And it was so true, because once I did ground and anchor appropriately, and then also give myself the freedom to go even further up, that was also the other thing. I was in such a high vibrational state, it almost didn't feel safe, if you will. It was kind of a new threshold as well. So there was both being grounded and then being able to actually almost be in almost an active meditative state where I could be like, no, I'm okay, and just really conscious to not sort of pull back my energy, because it was such a new level of experience.
And I learned a really good lesson when I was in my infancy of playing with this energy, because I shared with my Reiki teacher, my Reiki master, that I was playing with the energy. And this is before breath came into the picture, when I was really just moving the energy through. And obviously I was breathing during sex, but just not using it consciously as that tool. And I had gone through a recent breakup, but we were still sort of kind of seeing each other. And the boyfriend I was no longer with, we did get together and had sex again one more time after I'd started playing with moving this energy. And I did it while I was with him. And I shared that with her, that I was playing with the energy in this way. She said, be really careful. She said, because if the other person doesn't know what you're doing, it can leave them really ungrounded and scattered. It can impact them. Sure enough, I ran into him. Because I told her right away the next day, and I ran into him later that day on the sidewalk, and he was scattered. He was all over the place. So I had actually, because, so that was a big lesson very early in my experimenting with it, the responsibility of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. I mean, yeah, now we're talking about this really sort of interesting that I actually quite like talking about a lot, because I mean, a lot of people they kind of look at sexuality, they're really thinking of the physical part of it, they're really thinking of, consent and conversations around the physicality of it, around the biology of it. I mean, and then, I mean, we're all at different levels. I mean, I still meet people that even having conversations about their just basic biological sexual desires are still really tough. So, I just want to give everyone space to know that, they're welcome, and we all have our different spaces. But, there's kind of when we start getting more into the consent and talking about the biological stuff. And then there's like more like when we're going to talk about the experience that we want and how we would like that and what our boundaries are and what we're not into. And, you kind of move into that. And then there's this whole energetic realm that you're talking about that is really important. And that's, understanding, first of all, that you're going to be taking in that person's energy.
Yes.
And there's a responsibility in that, and a responsibility as to whether you are going to be clearing yourself or all of these things after, that you're going to, if you're very empathic, going to be feeling a lot of things from that person that may not actually be yours.
Yeah.
Might be carrying around after too, right? And that, yes, any type of work that you're going to be doing is that's energy work, and it's energy work that you're both going to be partaking in.
Yeah. And then I didn't share with him I was doing that, so he was unaware. So I learned very quickly I have a responsibility to include the other person. You can't just play with this stuff without someone's permission.
So, well, you can play with it when you're by yourself, though.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes.
I mean, if we want to get into the really weird conversations, I mean, I even have consent around being by myself and distancing with people. Like I actually believe, and actually asking somebody else's higher self, or actually asking them physically before you use them in fantasy, even actually.
I love that. Yeah.
Yes,
that's a very good point.
Yeah, it's a little controversial.
Well, when you're doing long distance Reiki healing, you actually have to ask the soul of the person permission to do it. If you haven't already received it from them directly, you have to have that permission to proceed.
Exactly. And, and I'm just quite sensitive myself. So not only did I have that energy background, like you're talking about too, where I always just knew to ask for permission before I connected with somebody's energy, whether it was sexually or not sexually. But also I could feel when people were coming into my field. Like I could feel when people were
bringing you into their
fantasies about me. And it was so interesting because it took me a while to piece it together, but it would be like, I'd be kind of feeling this stuff and I could kind of feel someone in my, it was like, what's going on? And then I would get like a phone call or something being like, oh my gosh, you were just on my mind, blah, 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 blah. And it was like, oh, were you like and it was like, yes. And it was like, okay, like, and that just brought up like a whole nother level for me around sexual boundaries. And around how I really feel about how we treat each other sexually, how we're interacting with each other, whether it's, in person or it's energetically.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. But yes, it's kind of like, I mean, I think as a society, we're still in the baby steps of consent. So I mean, I feel like that conversation can be a lot for people, but I also think it's really good to plant the seeds, because I think there's probably a lot of empaths that might listen to this and be like, oh, you know what? That makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, this is a really fascinating topic.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
I know we wanted to dive a little bit into connecting with self through self pleasuring, and this seems like a
Yes.
really nice little,
Want to
um,
get into that?
yeah, exactly. And so, like, how have you found that you can use self pleasuring to really enhance your connection to self? Because I know I've
Mhm.
seen a lot of posts from people really frustrated that they are not able to have that sexual connection with other people right now,
Right.
really feeling either completely disconnected from their self pleasuring practice and like
Mhm.
completely turning their sexual energy off,
Mhm.
or feeling like they need to stop because it's just it's become compulsive.
Got
Yeah.
it. Okay. Well, that's a good question. I have been, and I sort of feel like I've been mastering the art of self pleasure over the years because I've been single for a while. For many years, I was always in a relationship. And it's only been recent years, I don't know, I guess since I came back to Vancouver 2014, where I've been single. Now I'm not completely celibate, but mostly celibate. It's very common. I'll usually go about a year with
Yeah.
no lover at all. And then it's like, okay, I really need contact with another human. And until I am open to meeting a life partner, but until I meet someone where I see that potential, I will have a very brief period, will engage with a lover. And then it's like, okay, this isn't going to develop into something bigger. So I'm going to go back to being solo again. So I have very long periods of being solo. And my sex life is freaking amazing. Like really, really wonderful. Like the bar is set really high because it's like I have such a great time on my own. You have to match that if I'm going to be with you. And the key for me, because my spiritual path plays such a big part of my life.
Hmm.
So for me, it's never just about physical release. So it's not, I don't even engage in it every day. Sometimes I might go a week where it is every night, and then I'm just a break for a while. But for me, I fill myself up, and my self pleasure practice is extremely fulfilling on an emotional and a spiritual level as well. And
Totally.
I believe that's what makes a difference between the compulsion, the addiction. It's kind of like me with the Smarties in the bowl. It's like
Yeah.
not filling everything. So if it's just a physical release, there's a void that's never really being filled, because
Yeah.
the joy of being with another is that connection.
Yeah.
Whether we're in love with them or not, there's still an emotional fulfillment of being with another person.
Yeah.
And if you're conscious and you're making eye contact and having that connections, because even, you know, those lovers I've been with over the year, they've been beautiful men. So there's been, beautiful eye contact and a spiritual connection. They're still my friends. So there was that. So what I do by myself is I take that time, to connect with my heart chakra and to just connect and just feel it. And it's not about just getting myself off to have an orgasm. I keep coconut oil by my bedside, so I have that, and I do some breath, and I have a conversation in my book, The Four Sacred Laws of Sexual Enlightenment. The Four Sacred Laws, the invitation. And that's my favorite chapter because it's just so beautiful. It's where I literally invite the lover essence of God's source into my sexual experience,
Hmm.
just for the pure joy of just, share, come, experience this beautiful pleasure with me, experience my body with me. So it's, and I've learned to do that in meditation. Any physical activity, really, whether it's eating, if it's a pleasure food, I like to pray over my food. Oh, this is so good. Come experience this with me. Meditation, sitting outside. There's inviting. Lots of times when we do meditation, we're saying a prayer or sometimes asking for something, but just inviting source to come and experience it with you, just for the pure joy of the physical experience, because the non-physical experience is the joy of the physical through us. So I take that into my self-pleasure practice. I'll extend that invitation and I'll imagine, okay, what does the lover essence of God's source feel like to me? It's nearly always a masculine. Sometimes I'll go with a feminine, but just it's a very personal thing. You get to go into that little virtual reality, the sound of their voice, the touch of their hands, the color of their skin, and then I'll imagine that their hands are touching me, or with the help of the coconut oil, I might imagine that they're, my fingers are actually their tongue, and they're giving me this beautiful oral sex. So it becomes a whole ritual, and then I might get myself close and then extend it, pull back, and then make it last a little longer. So I just make it that, like the food that we talk about, taking the time to just savor it and eat it slowly. I do that in my sexual practice. And so that makes it really fulfilling emotionally, spiritually, and physically.
Yeah.
And explore your body, play with your body more. Through my self-pleasure practice, I've discovered things about my orgasmic energy that have expanded, and I've learned things about my body as
yeah.
well, that my capabilities, my orgasmic capabilities, have expanded through my own self-pleasure. So now when I am with a partner, I'll be able to share that with them, of how they can contribute and be in that with me.
Yeah, like I love that you're bringing up the difference between what I call masturbating,
Yeah.
which is, you're basically in it for the orgasm,
Yes.
and the self pleasuring. So now you've added that in where you're just like in it.
Yeah.
It's a pleasurable experience. It's exploratory. It's playful. It's,
Yeah.
whatever you really want to make it. I mean, like I have, I've worked with lots of people. Some people are kinky, and they spank themselves, scratch themselves, bite themselves, suck their own toes. I mean, it's amazing what one can do to oneself. Very easily, actually.
I love it.
And then, I'm hearing this whole other invitation from you, which is now making it a spiritual practice where you're like
Yeah.
inviting in God, source, essence, whatever that is to the person, and
Yes.
really inviting that energy to now be part of your experience as well.
Yeah. So instead of just masturbation, it is a ritual. The dictionary definition of masturbation is stroking for physical release. And this takes it beyond that. And, so in that moment of orgasm, I'm literally consciously sharing that energy. Oh, I have to share a story with you that was a huge confirmation for me. I was wandering around the US between 2010, 2014, and I think it was 2012. I rented a place in Palm Springs, and I was there for about 7 months off season. So I had this amazing 1-bedroom condo right by poolside. And one night I went out, and they always had the jacuzzi shut off at night. And I went out one night, it was about 4 or 5 in the morning. I've been up creating on my computer all night, writing, and all the lights were out everywhere. So all the neighbors were asleep, and the jacuzzi was going. Now, most women realize that jacuzzis are a beautiful way to give yourself pleasure. Jacuzzis are great for giving a woman orgasm. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have a nice little self-pleasure party here. So I got in the jacuzzi, and I was sort of doing my ritual, thinking about sending the energy down to the earth. And then I'm doing the breathing, and I'm, hands-free orgasm with the help of the jacuzzi. And I'm like, have my hands up, and I'm sending it up to source as it's happening. I'm thinking I have to teach this to other women. And just as I said that, I opened my eyes, and my arms were spread up to the sky. And I see this big bird, and I'm like, what's a bird of prey doing out at night? And it flew. As it got closer, it went literally at the exact center point of where my arms were outstretched, and it was a white owl.
Oh, wow.
And spirit speaks to me through animals because they know I'm going to look it up. So I got my animal speak book when I went back in the house, and by Ted Andrews, and the white owl is feminine wisdom.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
It was so powerful. Yeah, I'll never forget that moment. It was so powerful.
It is such a big,
beautiful confirmation.
yeah, and it is such a big invitation, I think, to all of us on this planet to really shift into more conscious sexuality right now.
Yeah.
I hear from people, that, they don't want to have sex with their partners because it feels like they're just kind of offloading stress or just trying to have that release. And they're just like, I don't really want to be a tool used in terms of their offloading or their releasing, and then, I hear from a lot of people that, really, when they're masturbating or they're having sex, it's really exhausting. It's really energy depleting. In fact, a lot of people are using this as an energy depletion before they go to bed. They're just like, I just want to like offload this energy and release it. And yet when we can really bring a consciousness into our sexuality, I mean, for myself, I found that it just completely even changed how I orgasmed from this sort of release, this offloading of energy, to actually this really fulfilling, and it can be energizing, it can be relaxing, it can be like so many different energies, but I mean, the word is fulfilling. It just fills you up, like fills you up so that you can, yes, go rest and relax and go lay in the sun or go to sleep if you want to, or so that you can have more energy for your day and for, your work or for your kids or for like whatever that passion is that you have too. And, I so love that you're bringing this up, because I really do just think there's such a deep, deep, deep invitation to humanity to perhaps turn some of those things off, to stop, maybe for just even a moment, stop relying on maybe the vices that you may have in your sexual life. Maybe for a moment, put some of the toys away. And, I'm not one of those people that thinks that we shouldn't use toys. I've heard it in the conscious sexual community. I mean, play with things, right? But I mean, be in consciousness about it, be in awareness about it, be, right, like what you're saying, in the self-pleasuring zone with it, versus the sort of frenzied zone.
Yes, I mean, I'm more of an organic girl. I really love my hands. I have amazing hands. So, but yeah, if you like the toys, fine, but make it a ritual. So it's not just trying to get this over with quick. And once you embody that, because we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. So once you integrate that and start weaving it together, I don't think there's any turning back, because the experience is expanded so much. So if toys are your thing, you can also integrate that. It's about taking the time, exploring self, plugging into spirit, whatever that is to you, whether you call them like, God, creator, source. And when I first started exploring this too, I felt that there was a block. I remember seeing posts sometimes when I'd share it in private groups, well, God's got nothing to do with my sex. And I realized that there was sort of a block coming up, because a lot of people were thinking of God as Father God, God the Father, or Mother Father God. And we don't want to invite our parents in the bedroom. That's just weird. So remembering that, God's source, the divine, comes in all relationships, the brother, the sister, the friend, and the lovers. You're inviting the lover essence of God's source, and you get to imagine whatever that is to you.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, for me, I agree. Like, God's source exists in everything. It's not, this deity in the sky. And I mean, that's for everybody as they are soaking this up to choose what's right for them. I know that, some people still do see God as that. And I did when I was younger, and that's fair enough. But then, I always became curious growing up, because it was like, well, it feels like more than that. So, I mean, that was just my natural progression, and an opening to, quite frankly, I invite God into my life in all times. It's not just part of, my sex. I'm like, I literally all times, if I'm having, if I'm feeling lonely in a day, like that's when I'm like on my knees. I'm just like, like I'm inviting you in, like, come be with me. Come be with me. Where am I not connecting with you? Where am I not inviting you in? Because that's when I see, those kinds of feelings come up for me the most. That disconnection is when I'm somehow not inviting life in, when I'm not inviting God into every part of my life, whether it be as a mom, as a lover, in my work, always that invitation is there.
Yeah.
And that just feels good for me. And, whether that's everybody's thing is a whole nother thing, but.
And I want to, if you're single and you want to call in a beloved, if you want to call a partner into your life, this type of self-pleasure practice is such a beautiful way to imagine. It's like, okay,
It
well,
is.
if I'm with my ideal partner, how would they talk to me? How would they touch me? What would it feel like to be in their presence, in their essence? And what you're doing, you're imagining them on a spiritual level.
Yeah.
Because they're not with you physically, so you're fantasizing about them non-physically. So plug into that. What does their heart feel like? How do they connect with me?
Yeah.
When they love me, what does that feel like? And then imagine your hands are their hands, and connect with that, and have that fantasy about your future lover. I actually, excuse me, my nose is getting itchy because I've got over sugar consumption. I get itchy ears and itchy nose. It's my candida kicking in. I'm about to go on a candida cleanse. I was doing that. I have to give you an example. Here's another personal story that's kind of fun. I think it was about 2 years ago now. I got so specific about a partner. I was also very clear at the time I didn't want to be in a relationship. I was just too focused on my work, but I did want a physical lover in my life. So I started fantasizing, and I saw him. He was tall, he had brown skin, he was Latin, his hands, the sound of his voice, everything. I got so specific with the description. And shortly after that, I got a call from this person who found me online. He wanted to talk to me. I always do a consultation first to make sure we're a good match as client and practitioner. And he really wanted the consultation in person. So I said, okay, I don't usually do that, but fine. So he walked in and he's sitting in my studio, and I swear it's the perfect description of my fantasies that I've been having. I'm like, so I had to breathe, stay grounded, and be the professional. And I was going to send him a printout of a possible, package of sessions. And a few days later, I realized, oh shoot, I forgot to send this to this beautiful man. And so I texted him. I said, I'm sorry, I forgot to send you the document. I'll send it short and soon. And he shared with me, when I left your house, I wanted to come back and I wanted to grab you and kiss you. He was like a Brazilian. Oh, and I said, okay. So he never became a client. I don't mix the two. I don't mix clients with lovers. So he never became a client. But we had, and he's still a friend. We saw, because it was a temporary thing. He wasn't, and still isn't, looking for a relationship. So it was temporary. It was so beautiful, and it was exactly like my fantasy.
Yes.
So it can be powerful.
It can, and I mean,
Be very careful of what you ask for.
And you do it while you're with someone too, in terms
Yes.
of reshaping and reigniting desire and passion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yes.
when you really come into full pleasure with yourself, and you're really in your sexuality, and you're able to be in that really sensual, connected energy with yourself, it transforms your relationships.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, literally, you will have a partner, they'll be like, what's going on? And when you are more confident about what you like, and we do put aside the toys and we actually do explore with our hands, because, this is, I don't know if it's a bit generational or whatever, but I mean, I was sort of started on toys and I had to learn to use my hands. Whereas some of the other women that I've worked with in Tantra, they actually started with their hands, and, they either chose not to go to the toys or that sort of thing. But, I know a lot of women that don't know how to use their hands whatsoever when it comes to self-pleasuring. And that becomes very difficult then to ask for what you want from your lover.
Exactly.
Or to tell them what you want, because, well, they're not a toy.
Yeah.
Their hands,
there's nothing in their body that vibrates the way a piece of hard plastic does, or rubber. Yeah, it's not a human motion.
Yeah. And I mean, most partners find it, incredible turn on, when their partner can say to them, oh, what I would really love, like, is if you touched me like this and did this, and like, oh, I have this spot right here. It's just like,
Yeah. And I've believed for a while now that it'd be such beautiful sex ed for the younger. I mean, just as an example, in Africa, I forget what countries, it was sort of a thing where they would take, when the young girls became of age, they would take them in the hut. The elder women would take them in a hut, and they would just disappear in there for 2 weeks. And they would lie on top of them, show them how to move their body. They would use wooden models. They would teach them all about their sexual energy, how to receive the pleasure they needed, and how to do that. And they would teach them in this way. And I thought, how beautiful it would be if we just give the young girls permission to explore their body, to figure out their body. This old paradigm of, it's bad to touch yourself. That's like saying some stranger you haven't even met yet has more right to touch your own body than you do.
Oh,
Really giving the girls permission to touch their body, to explore it, and to do it in a way that they are connecting with it from a place of love.
yeah.
So we're not teaching them the sexual addiction version of masturbation, but really the sacredness of their body, how to connect with their body, and figure out how to connect with their body. So when they are ready to be with another person, they've self-educated themselves. They know what feels good to them. They know how to guide them. They know how to teach them, and teach them how to communicate in a compassionate way to guide their partner on what works for them. Because
Yeah.
I know when I grew up, I just assumed that the boys knew what to do, and just whatever the boys were doing, I'd go along with. And, I'd have to fake orgasm sometimes because I didn't want to hurt them feelings and have them think they weren't getting it right, even though they weren't.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I
And
mean, that's a whole other topic right there. The
it's
whole
true.
how
But
we
yeah.
teach the teenagers to understand and learn about their body, and in a way that they're preparing for when they are ready to be with another person.
Well, I mean, it's so interesting that you bring this up. I just read an article actually about Japan
Hmm.
and Japan's sexual heritage, and not exactly the same. They would have an aunt or an uncle actually teach the younger person once they reached a certain age
Mm.
about their bodies and about sexuality, about sexual energy, and all of this. And and then it got lost when sort of they became westernized.
Mm.
And so it's interesting because I keep seeing this pattern, as I talk to different people around the world, that, there's this very Eastern kind of Western thing. And a lot of the Eastern traditions, some of the more shamanic cultures, things like this, they really did teach the younger generation about their bodies, about their sexuality, about
Mhm.
honoring themselves, about being able to make choices, about consent, all those
Mhm.
kinds of things. And I do think that there is a need for that to come back in. Like as a mother
Yeah.
myself, I've made sure it's so interesting because I mean, I'm not that old. And I still had so many moms in my mom's circles when my daughter was born talking about how boys masturbate and self-pleasure and girls don't.
Mm.
And I mean, I was just like, huh?
Interesting. Yeah.
Like there's this idea still in our society that genetically somehow women and girls are not I don't know, equipped with the same nerve endings, because
Yeah.
really as a child it has nothing to do really with our sexuality. It just has to do with self-pleasure. It's what feels good. It's
Yeah.
it's part of our existence really, and it has nothing to do with reproductive sex at that point, right? And yeah, so it's really interesting, like, hearing, these parents already like talking like this in front of their children. And I was like, wow, how much does that shape us as men and women?
Yeah.
Sort of being told that, maybe for a man, it's really normal to want to touch yourself and pleasure yourself and explore yourself. And this really underlying idea as a woman that you're somehow the outlier if you're doing that, like that's somehow not normal. And then too, I have so many clients where I hear it again and again where they're like, wow, I was self-pleasuring at such a young age, and I think I was like early to become sexual, because they equated that self-pleasuring with that reproductive sex, and there was a shame attached to it,
Wow.
because I was too young to be doing that. I shouldn't have been thinking about that yet, but I was. So this must mean I'm just like this super hypersexual person, you know? And I don't think those preconceived ideas are actually really healthy for us. Like it's nerve endings. It's like
Yeah.
wanting tickles when you're little, or wanting a hug, or wanting a kiss, or, it's your body,
That I don't believe there's any mistakes. Our bodies were created perfectly the way they are. Those nerve endings are there for a reason.
And they're there when we're born. It's not like all of a sudden they develop when we're like 11, 12, 13. Right? Like it comes at the onset of sexual reproduction. Like they're the whole time, and so, yeah, I think it's really important with our children to just normalize it. Yes. It doesn't mean they have to be doing it at the dinner table or on the couch, or, like my daughter, I'm like,
boundaries, teaching them boundaries.
We go do that in the bedroom. We go do that in the bathroom. I mean, last night she's so cute. She's like, Mom, does Spider-Man do that? And I'm like, does Spider-Man touch his private parts, play with his genitals? And she's just like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm sure that Spider-Man does. I'm pretty sure just about everybody does.
Yeah.
She's like, but he wouldn't do that in public, right? And I'm like, no. I'm like, when you're little, we teach you that it's better to do these things. So cute, because then she's like, oh, was Spider-Man a baby at some point? I'm like, yes, Spider-Man was a baby.
Oh, I love it. Oh my God.
But it's so simple. It doesn't have to be, like, I mean, I hear so many parents, they're concerned it's going to become a really sexual conversation. And it really doesn't. I mean, our children are innocent. They're young. It's just about their exploration. It's just about them enjoying their bodies, just as much as them wanting to play in water or have sun on their skin or eating certain foods. It's completely natural.
And I want to ask you, if last time I looked, at least in Western world, in sex ed, once they get into school, maybe it's different, it depends on the location, but they don't even include the clitoris in the anatomy books. Like it's non-existent.
So I know, like, medically, period.
Yeah.
We didn't even teach doctors about the clitoris. Like, this whole idea just is like nuts to me. Like, I mean, I can't even imagine getting a medical education and being told that there was a part of the body that was so irrelevant because it was considered only for sexual pleasure. And I can't imagine if we all of a sudden had, deemed like a man's penis to only be for sexual pleasure or something. It just would be, weird. But it wasn't in the books. She's not at the point where there's any real biological sex education that I'm aware of. There was a course that she could take, which I wanted her to be able to take, but they decided to make it optional because about a few of the parents had issues with it. So some of the parents really wanted it, and it's about the body, and some of the parents really didn't want it. I would guess it's still not in there based on the resources, because I have different books and stuff that apparently they'll use in the school system. None of them talk anything about some of the books will get into vulva, which I think is, most women don't even know when I say they have a vulva. They're just like, huh? It's a vagina. It's like, well, actually, you have a vulva, you have labia, you have a clitoris. So most of them just, at the best, I've noticed, get into vulva, not even labia, not even clitoris. It'd be nice to see some of that, because I mean, every girl too is so different looking. Yes. I mean, we're so uniquely formed. It's so I know, as girls grow up, that's a big thing too, especially given our porn industry has now decided that there's a very certain type of vulva that is ideal, right? It's interesting. I mean, I think it's actually a lot, I was thinking about, it's a lot like men being circumcised and uncircumcised over here too, right? There's a lot of showing of a circumcised man and not an uncircumcised.
Yeah, and I actually, it's only been reasonably recent years when I'm embracing both. For me, I thought it was more attractive, the circumcised. And then when I became more aware and thought, wait a minute, this is genital mutilation. they're cutting this infant child. This is not cool. So,
Yeah.
I changed my tune on that quite quickly. And France, I really want to give kudos to France because they're really leading the way with sex ed. They do teach the clitoris. They have a 3D model of the entire
Totally.
structure of it that they teach to their children, to young children. They learn at a very early age the entire anatomy.
I don't really see why it should be any different than you have an elbow, you have a nose. I mean, when we start segregating it, that's when you start creating these
Like,
weird
to eliminate it out of the diagrams, like there's like
Yeah.
it just doesn't make sense to me. We don't do that with any other body part.
We only do because we've decided that that's purely for sex. I mean, that's the fun.
Yeah.
It's not. It's
Yeah.
really not. Like, in terms of like, pelvic health, like all of this stuff, like these are important things to know, and they're just not conversations that I think happen enough. But yeah, so I think right now, parents, at least here in North America, I think we're kind of on our own for teaching our kids that. And it's pretty easy if you're just normal about it, like it's like, like see them do it. It's like, oh, does that feel good? Oh, that's your vulva, or that's your clitoris, or that's your, And I mean, you can buy little things to help show them too, right? Like little, things, or you can get, photographs, more of the cartoon kind of style thing. And, let kids know about their bodies.
Yes.
Like even boys, like here's your testicles, and here's your, you have a prostate. Like there's all sorts, like, I mean, I meet grown men that really don't know where their prostate is, what they should be doing with it, how to take care of it. And I mean, prostate health is so huge for men as they get older.
It is. Yes.
So huge. And it's so undereducated. Like, I mean, it's just, they don't know.
Yeah, it's true.
And so I think, we need to start treating this part of our body like the rest of our bodies, and really like, I mean, and that's just the biology of it. I have so much to say about our sexual education in terms of the fact that it is actually strictly biological and heterosexual, and more on the avoidant basis, when you're going to get the STIs and like all of this, then here's how to emotionally move into a relationship. Here's how to feel prepared. Here's what consent is. Here's, how to be self-responsible. Like emotional health is huge, and we don't teach it at all when it comes to our kids. And then we can't figure out why they're having all these confusing sexual experiences as teenagers. There's boys that are like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I just raped this girl. And the girl's like, I don't know if I was just raped, because I mean, they had no idea in the first place.
The blind leading the blind.
Of like what they were doing. It's terribly traumatic for children, like for teenagers, to be getting into some of these circumstances and making all these mistakes that were so preventable if we gave them a little bit of education that then, shape the rest of their sex lives. And their relationships, So such an important topic. And we've kind of moved away from our it needs to be
self-pleasure sort of took its own direction. But
I mean, it is part of it, right?
Bringing it back to that, though, that's where it begins.
It's part of it. I mean,
to explore your own body, as adults, and and this is an important conversation, how as adults that guide our children how to do it in a way that's conscious and awake and feel safe and
totally
guilt-free, judgment-free, and just these beautiful, magnificent bodies.
And I'm like such a big believer that, like I've had a lot of personal connection with sexual abuse and child sexual abuse and stuff like this. And I am so in the belief that because all the studies show that kids are more in harm's way when we have unhealthy sexual upbringings ourselves, when
Yeah.
we're not in a healthy place with our own sexuality, when we're not in that place where we can really enjoy our own bodies fully. And
Hmm.
so I know too that as we are opening up this dialogue and more people are becoming aware of just how sacred they are and how important their own self-pleasuring is, and how welcome they are to be in this beautiful healthy sexual energy versus a repressed state or
Yeah.
an unhealthy state of shame and guilt around their sexuality. I know that that is also going to make sure that more of our children are not having that unhealthy sexual energy pushed onto them.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know
That's important what you say, the energetic connection, because just as I shared with you when I first started exploring moving the energy through, and it had a not positive impact on my partner because I was playing with it by myself without including him, and he was thrown really off balance the next day because of it. So it's so powerful, and things happen for a reason. So just what you were pointing on about how childhood abuse, sexual abuse can come. It's a result of a specific energy frequency that has been out there, and
yeah,
whether it's intentional or not intentional, we're always creating our own reality.
yeah,
And even look what we're experiencing right now on a global level. Look what we've manifested as a global human family. This reality that we're all living in right now with the virus. So, energy is as powerful as the physical. It's never just about the physical, ever. Whether you're consciously doing it or subconsciously doing it, our energy, the energetic frequency and ripple effect
yeah,
is so powerful and an integral part of it. So when you consciously approach the energetic side of it, it's
yeah,
huge.
totally. And I think that's the reason that there's been such a disconnect for so many years between religion and sexuality, is because sexuality is a very powerful tool. It's
Mhm.
powerful in terms of um, being connected to yourself. It's powerful in terms of being connected to source. It's powerful in terms of connecting to each other. And really, I think there's just such a huge invitation to really take back
Mhm.
that power, to take back that juiciness, to take back that sensuality that we all have so innately within us, and to
Yes.
really be able to be in the pleasure of our own bodies, to be able to really enter into that pleasure with the universe, to be able to enter in that pleasure with each other in a really conscious, sacred, freaking amazing, blissful, juicy, sexy,
Yes.
fantastic
Yeah.
way.
As humans, like I said earlier, we are that conduit between the two realms. Before we had a body, we were a non-physical intelligence, and it was a sexual energy that made it impossible to inhabit this body. So while we're inhabiting this body, our sexual energy is integrally connected with who we are spiritually, because it's what brought us here. So while we're in this body, when we consciously activate the energy and share it, it plugs us into the non-physical divine realm in a really powerful, beautiful way.
Absolutely, yes. Well, thank you so much for being on here today. This was just such a lovely conversation. Yes,
Lovely. Yes. Thank you for having me. This has been wonderful.
absolutely. Is there anything that you would like to leave everyone with, as sort of a last thought?
Hmm. Oh, yeah, we're in a very interesting, unique time, as we all know. So, bringing it back to what you said in the beginning about just being really gentle with
Mm,
yourself, being gentle with yourself. And if you are in isolation alone as a single person, um, it's all about perspective. So I invite you to use this time to go into a self exploration of new discovery with your body, with your energy, with your connection to source, and how that all weaves together,
yeah,
and just explore that from a place of love. Just, connect with your heart first, take some deep breaths. And, this is also an anchor. If you look at our lower chakras, which connect us to earthly realm, or the first, second, third, the chakras that connect us to the upper realm, the seventh, the sixth, and the fifth, and then there's the center, which is the heart. So just always come to that. And so before you start your exploration, just come into the heart space, connect with your love, and just trust you're an intuitive being. You'll know what feels right to you.
Totally.
And just be in that. And if you're a couple in isolation, then it's so beautiful to explore that with one another. As you connect with one another's eyes, you see the reflection of the divine in one another, and you can bounce that off of each other as you try new explorations.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm very curious to see if there's a whole bunch of higher number of normal births that happen 9 months down the road. From
I'm like, is there going to be more? Is there going to be less? I know, like, some people's, like, havoc is breaking out at their home, and some, they've decided that they're not talking at all. And, like, I mean, it's so interesting, right? There's such, I think everyone kind of wants to think that the rest of the world's going through what they're going through, but I think there's such a range of
it's very different. I know some people are hating it. Me personally, I'm one of those people. I'm loving it. I'm loving the quiet. I have an elderly roommate. He's like in his late 70s. He's just a sweet soul. We each have our own floor in the house, and we meet in the middle, and we live so peacefully together. And I've got nature, but I'm just loving the quiet. And I know a few people I've talked to, and it's almost like we're whispering it. We're thinking, I really hope this lasts a little longer. I want it to go on a little longer. and then there's people are like, I don't want to, they just want to get out of their house. They want everything to go back the way it was. And then my heart pours out to those people who are in domestic abuse and experiencing so much of that more. So there's a huge range of experiences going on right now.
Yeah, there's
huge range. It's not the same for everyone at all.
Yeah, I know, because I keep seeing, like, the great, this pause, and I'm thinking, wow, like, I've talked to people where there's no pause going on in their life. Like, everything has actually accelerated because of stresses in their house and things like this. And so, I think it's nice to be conscious that, everybody is going through a really different experience here.
I mean, I work from home a lot anyway, when I'm not working part-time in film. I'm working home on my computer, whether I'm working on my websites, creating new online programs. So that hasn't really changed a lot for me. And actually my creative juices are going crazy right now, because I don't know if it's just the quietness that's out there. So yeah, it's a different experience for everybody.
It is indeed.
Well, thank you with that, and do your best to, you are the creator of your reality. So whatever you can, do your best to make it a beautiful experience. So when you come out of this, that maybe a new birth, whether it's a new birthing of awareness of your body, and a new birth of, what you want to do differently, just, yeah.
And I mean, the reality is, when we use the word birth, the birth can be an uncomfortable, kind of squeezing experience.
Yes.
But there's new life at the end of it, right? There's new openings, there's new expansions, there's new awarenesses. And so, I just always try and keep that in mind. Like, when I'm going through really difficult times, it's like, there is an opening at the end of this. There's a gift. There's something I'm being asked to move into that's just so powerful, that is going to give me so much more freedom and joy and bliss at the end of this. And so, for all you out there that are going through perhaps the squeezing stage, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And
just be careful there is a lot of noise out there. So I don't think there's ever been a time where it's more important to do the best you can to be that calm in the chaos, the eye of the storm. You can be aware of the noise and witness it, observe it, but be careful of getting caught up in that frantic chaos, because there is that out there as well.
Oh, there is. I went to the grocery.
Being that eye of the storm. And I've been listening to a lot of channelings, Bashar, Abraham Hicks, different people like that. And they're all saying the same thing. It's really important to be the eye of the storm right now.
Yeah.
Storm go on around you, but be the one that's just boom, anchored it. Witness, observe, and just be that. Work on you. Be with you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because I mean, people
as possible.
People are stressed out. Like, I haven't been out of the house very much, and I finally needed to go get some groceries.
Yeah.
And so I went to 2 stores in one day. Wow. And
Big journey.
it was like, wow, I was like in the Twilight Zone. I was like, ooh.
About a week and a half ago, I had to go to the vet to get my dog's meds, get groceries, and go to the post office all in one day. It was like this huge adventure.
I know, right? But it was so interesting. Like the first store I went into, like I just had the most amazing, delicious, delightful conversations with people. It was so nice. It was so friendly. Went to the next store and like people really like, there was a couple really grouchy people in that store. And, you know, I guess like I sort of inhibited the distancing a little bit. I didn't really mean to. And, you know, they got really mad. And I was like, oh, you know, like, I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to. And then they were like mad that I was nice. And I was just like, oh, this is so intriguing. Like, this is not my stuff. Like, you know,
Yeah.
but, you know, I think being gentle is good because, I mean, those people are really stressed. They're not behaving like that because they're in their own ease, you know? So the more I think that we can be that, I think that is.
Exactly. Don't take it personally. And for those of you who have a spiritual practice, this is your spiritual practice. How to be
Exactly.
that calm in the chaos if your kids are running around you like crazy.
Speaking of the kiddo, okay. I got to run.
Much love.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.